Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take those really complex documents, dense research, sometimes even manifestos, and we try to boil them down to the core insights, the things you really need to grasp.
And today we've got something pretty remarkable on the table. We're looking at a proposal that's just, well, staggering in its ambition. It goes way beyond a standard business plan.
Right.
We're essentially examining what looks like a detailed blueprint for a whole new national operating system for social services in Nepal,
Okay.
starting specifically in the Kathmandu Valley.
That really is the crux of it. The material we're diving into today, it's not just some academic paper. It's pitched as the design for something called the Kalki Sena super movement. And it's built on this financial philosophy they've termed Kalkiwad economics. The core idea, I mean, it's almost hard to believe. They want to set up universal social welfare, starting with free healthcare for everyone, and fund it completely, perpetually, just from the profits of a homegrown tech super app, specifically its ride-hailing part.
Yeah, it's like a mix of hyper-local development economics, maybe some high-frequency digital commerce, and definitely a kind of political movement woven in. So our mission today, our deep dive, it's really focused on three key things.
Okay.
First, can we validate the initial money, the
Yeah.
seed capital feasibility? Second, we need to really rigorously pick apart the sustainability of this tech engine they're proposing.
Right, the app.
Exactly. And third, critically examine the legal side, the governance mechanisms. Can these actually deliver on such enormous promises to society?
And the absolute heart of this pitch, the promise they're making directly to, well, to you, if you're a resident of Kathmandu, is this central question.
Which is?
How can a single one-time payment of just 1,251 rupees, that's what, about $9 US?
Yeah.
How can that guarantee you not just free medical treatment for at least 2 years, but potentially lifetime free healthcare, plus education, plus legal aid?
Yeah.
And all of it supposedly bypassing normal taxes.
That's the hook. That's the initial social contract we absolutely have to unpack first. How does that initial transaction even work?
All right, let's start right there. The cost of entry. Because it's structured, well, unusually, it's not just a straightforward fee, is it? What do people actually have to do to get access to these 200-plus Kalki Sena clinics?
Yeah, the offer is very meticulously framed. It's like a three-part requirement specifically for Kathmandu Valley residents. First step, you've got to download their app, the Kalki Sena Drive app.
Okay, standard enough.
Second, you commit that RS-251. But third, and this is key, you have to understand how that money is legally split up.
Oh, okay.
And the promise for that is free treatment, guaranteed for, they say, a minimum of 2 years. That's kind of the operational window they're buying themselves initially. The bigger dream, of course, is making it lifelong access.
Let's definitely break down that, well, 1,251 rupees then. Because you said the way the funds are separated is critical. For the legal side and maybe the psychology of it all?
Absolutely critical. It's split into two very distinct, unequal pieces. There's Rs-251, which is specifically designated as a pure donation. They use the word chanda. And that goes directly to something called the Kalkiwad Research and Training Center, or KRTC.
Okay, so that's the nonprofit arm, the sort of ideological center.
Precisely. That's the think tank. Then the bigger chunk, the remaining Rs-1000, that's for the compulsory purchase of an ebook.
Compulsory purchase.
Yes. The ebook is titled The Economic Revolution to Make Nepal a World Guru. You have to buy the manifesto, essentially.
So wait, you make a small, non-taxable donation to a nonprofit research center, and you have to buy the movement's core text.
Yeah.
How does that, I mean, what does that structure achieve legally, or maybe in how people see their relationship with this thing?
Well, it's actually quite a clever legal and, frankly, psychological move. By channeling the donation part, the 251, to the nonprofit KRTC, they immediately create a legal firewall. That initial donation money is separate from the for-profit ride-hailing company they're planning.
Right, clear boundaries.
Exactly. And, crucially, making you buy the book. That frames you, the resident, not just as a customer getting a service or a patient using a clinic. It makes you an ideological participant. You're literally buying into the vision, this Kalkiwad economics, and that purchase then grants you access to the services that the ideology manages. The source documents are very clear. This total Rs-151 commitment is mandatory to be eligible.
Okay, so you buy into the philosophy. What exactly does this Kalkiwad philosophy promise? I mean, if it were fully implemented, the claims seem huge, way beyond just running some clinics.
Oh, they are immense, almost unbelievable when you list them out. The goals laid out by these KRTC economists, they're talking about complete national economic transformation.
Like what?
Like achieving a currency exchange rate where 1 Nepali rupee equals 25 Indian rupees, that's a massive shift.
Yes.
Plus, they promise to slash national corruption by 95% and permanently end the traditional dowry system and create something like 5 to 6 million new jobs nationally.
Wow, okay. And there was something about education, too. Equally big promises there.
Absolutely. Universal, free access to all levels of private education, from like nursery school right up through PhD programs. And the same for medical education, free MBBS, free MD degrees.
So this isn't just about providing healthcare. They're positioning this movement as, I don't know, a kind of parallel state welfare system.
That is exactly the core realization you have to have. This isn't presented as just filling a gap in what the government provides. It's framed as a potential replacement system built on this idea of self-funded social capitalism. But the immediate focus, the boots on the ground starting point is definitely those 200 clinics and solving a very specific, urgent public health crisis.
Why start with public health? Why is that the entry point? And you mentioned urgency. Why the ticking clock?
The sources really emphasize this. The primary driver, they claim, isn't profit, it's about national survival. They point to this looming, potentially existential threat, the very real danger of Nepal slipping into what scientists call the post-antibiotic era, maybe after 2050.
Post-antibiotic era, meaning when antibiotics just stop working.
Essentially, yes, widespread resistance driven by the rampant, uncontrolled misuse of antibiotics currently. People just taking them without proper diagnosis.
This is a surprisingly sophisticated, high-level strategic goal for a project starting with local clinics. The sources even call the current habit of self-medicating with antibiotics slow poison.
They do, explicitly. And their proposed solution is both technical and preventative. By offering free treatment at these 200 clinics, they're not just, treating coughs and colds. They plan to implement a critical scientific intervention, offering free culture tests whenever a doctor deems it necessary.
So finding out exactly what infection it is before prescribing.
Precisely. That's crucial for breaking the cycle of just throwing broad-spectrum antibiotics at everything, which fuels resistance. So they're tackling a major global public health challenge right down at the neighborhood clinic level. It's quite ambitious.
And these clinics, they serve a second strategic purpose too, right? Something about keeping talent in the country.
Yeah.
Human capital retention.
Absolutely. That's a huge piece of it. The sources estimate or calculate that Nepal is currently losing somewhere between 400 and 500 medical doctors every single year. Brain drain.
Wow, that many.
Yeah. So by setting up this pretty robust network, 200 clinics, each needing doctors, nurses, pharmacists, admin staff, they intend to provide stable, hopefully attractive local jobs. The goal is to directly plug that brain drain leak, keep the doctors practicing in Nepal.
Okay, and this leads directly into some pretty sharp political commentary in the source material, doesn't it? They explicitly compare their own clinic initiative to what the local government is doing, specifically mentioning Kathmandu's mayor, Balin Shah, and his free clinics.
They really don't pull any punches there. The argument laid out in the documents is that the mayor's clinics, while maybe well-intentioned, actually end up pushing doctors abroad.
How so? What's the reasoning?
The implied reasoning seems to be, perhaps, that those clinics might disrupt the existing private healthcare market's pricing, but without offering a truly sustainable, high-quality, long-term career path for the doctors themselves.
Okay.
So in stark contrast, they position their initiative, JSA's Kalki Sena clinics, as being explicitly designed to keep doctors in Nepal. The idea is that by integrating them into this massive, supposedly well-funded, private sector social project, they offer a better long-term prospect.
That definitely creates an immediate tension, doesn't it? Is this whole Kalki Sena thing meant to be supplementary to the government, or is it fundamentally setting itself up as a competitor?
That's a key question the structure raises. It certainly ups the stakes. But let's circle back to the money for a second. The initial funding. Does this crowdfunding plan, getting people to donate and buy the book, actually generate enough cash to cover that 2-year free treatment guarantee they're making?
Good question. What's the target number of members they need?
It's ambitious. The target is 2 million residents. That's 20 lakh people just within the Kathmandu Valley.
2 million people. Okay. If, hypothetically, they hit that target and each person commits the Rs, 12,251, what's the total initial capital injection we're looking at?
Do the math. 2 million people times ours. 12,251. It generates an enormous initial capital pool, ours 2.5 billion.
2.5 billion rupees just from donations and book sales.
That's the calculation. It breaks down into roughly ours, 2 billion from selling the ebook, and about ours 502 million from that smaller donation component. In US dollars, that's somewhere around $19 million. Seed capital, generated entirely domestically.
$19 million is a massive war chest to start with. Okay, how does that ours, 2.5 billion, compare to what they estimate it will cost to actually run those 200 clinics each year? What's the annual operating expenditure, the OPEX?
The financial modeling in the source document seems pretty comprehensive on this. They estimate that running 200 clinics, and this includes everything, staffing with, say, 2 doctors, 2 nurses, a pharmacist, admin support per clinic, plus rent, utilities, medicines, basic diagnostic tests, all of that comes out to approximately RS 1.34 billion per year.
Okay, 1.34 billion a year.
And that assumes, standard operational costs and salary levels that would be needed to actually attract and keep decent staff.
So let's compare. Ours, 2.5 billion in initial seed capital raised versus ours, 1.34 billion in annual running costs.
The math checks out quite comfortably, actually. That initial capital injection is enough to cover the full annual operating costs for a minimum of 18 to 20 months.
No.
So that initial promise, the guarantee of at least 2 years of free treatment, it seems financially sound based on this initial crowdfunding model, assuming, of course, they manage the rollout carefully and keep costs in line.
And it's a big but.
It only buys them time, about 2 years. Which brings us squarely to the next critical section, the sustainability. Where does the money come from after that initial seed fund runs out? How do they fund this thing forever?
Exactly. That clock starts ticking the moment the first clinic opens. To make good on the lifetime free healthcare promise, let alone expand into education and justice, they need a permanent, high-volume source of revenue. And that's where this Kalki Sena Drive app comes in. It's positioned as the sustainability engine.
This is the absolute core of what they call Kalkawad economics. It's this cross-subsidization model designed as a kind of purpose-driven financial loop. You have the for-profit business, the ride-hailing company, generating, hopefully, substantial cash flow. And then, crucially, 100% of the net profits from that company are legally locked. They're required to be funneled back to fund the nonprofit side, the KRTC, the clinics, eventually the education programs. It's basically social capitalism powered by digital commerce.
And this app, it's not some future dream. They plan to launch it fast, like within 3 or 4 months, competing directly with the big existing players.
That's the plan. Head-to-head with Patheo, InDrive, Yango, the established foreign apps operating in Kathmandu. But the absolute critical difference, the unique selling proposition, is that 100% profit pledge.
That mission lock.
Exactly. That mission lock is their biggest differentiator, and they immediately plan to use it as a core part of their marketing. It becomes a nationalistic appeal.
Oh, so?
The source material basically throws down a challenge to the public. It asks people directly, why keep using these foreign apps that, according to Kalki Sena's estimates, are currently sending ours 400 to 500 million in profits out of Nepal every single year?
So switch to our Nepali app, keep the money here, and fund your own healthcare.
Precisely. It transforms the choice of which app to use for a ride from just convenience or price into a moral and economic decision. When you choose Kalki Sena Drive, the pitch is you're not just getting a ride, you're doing something ethically good, something that directly pays for the free clinic down your street.
That's a really powerful non-monetary incentive to drive adoption, isn't it? It tries to build a sort of consumer moat around their service.
It certainly tries to. But, okay, potent messaging aside, we need to look at the numbers. Is the potential profit from ride-hailing in Kathmandu actually big enough to sustain this whole thing? Let's look at the unit economics.
All right. The data and the sources suggest there are about 800,000 active ride-hailing users in the Kathmandu Valley right now. What does that translate to in terms of the total money flowing through these apps annually?
The market volume. If you make some reasonable assumptions, say, the average user takes maybe 2 rides a day, and the average ride costs around Rs 200, you can estimate the total annual market size. The calculation suggests the total value of rides booked through these platforms in Kathmandu is somewhere around Rs 100 billion per year.
100 billion? Wow, that's roughly 750 million US dollars annually just in Kathmandu ride-hailing.
It's a massive market. Puts the potential into perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, so if Kalki Sena Drive jumps into that Rs 100 billion market, offers a competitive service, and takes a fairly standard commission, say 10%, what does that generate for them each year?
Okay, 10% commission on a Rs 100 billion market. That's a potential gross annual commission revenue of Rs 10 billion.
10 billion. Gross.
Gross, yes. Now, you have to factor in their own costs, running the app, marketing, tech support, driver payments, etc. If we apply a, let's say, conservative net profit margin of 10% on that gross commission.
So 10% of the 10 billion?
Right. That translates to a potential net profit of Rs 1 billion per year. Pure profit, after their own operational costs are covered.
1 billion rupees in net profit annually.
Hmm.
Okay, let's immediately compare that back to the clinic costs.
Yeah.
You said running all 200 clinics costs Rs 1.34 billion per year.
Exactly. And that single calculation basically confirms the core viability of the sustainability model. 1 billion rupees a year in profit is enough right off the bat to sustainably fund somewhere between 75 and 100 of those clinics without even touching the initial seed capital anymore.
Oh, okay.
And the analysis in the source material indicates that the entire project, funding all 200 plus clinics and maybe even starting to build reserves, becomes fully sustainable, like permanently funded. If their app manages to capture just 15 to 20% of the total ride-hailing market share in Kathmandu Valley.
15 to 20% market share makes it self-funding forever. That's surprisingly achievable, potentially, especially with that ethical hook.
It seems plausible, yes, but the vision laid out goes far beyond just being a ride-hailing app funding clinics. To reach national scale, to really guarantee the expansion into free education and legal justice, they argue they must evolve. They have to become a true super app.
Like the Southeast Asian models. Grab, Gojek?
Precisely. The blueprint explicitly references those parallels and argues Kalki Sena needs to build a complete digital ecosystem. It actually details 4 distinct but tightly integrated layers for this super movement. This is where the technical complexity and the ambition really ramps up.
Okay, 4 layers. Let's start with the engine, the moneymaker.
Yeah.
Layer 1, the service layer. What's included here beyond just booking rides?
The service layer is all about high-frequency transactions and trying to control margins. So yes, it starts with ride-hailing and parcel delivery, but it also includes food delivery, which is notoriously difficult to make profitable.
Very tricky market.
Exactly. So crucially, their plan includes building and operating their own cloud kitchens.
Their own kitchens. Why?
Control. The idea is to control the entire vertical stack for food, from ingredient sourcing maybe to cooking to delivery. This lets them manage quality much better and theoretically capture much higher profit margins compared to just being a middleman connecting existing restaurants to customers.
Interesting. What else is in this service layer?
It also integrates a dedicated Made in Nepal e-commerce platform, trying to boost local producers, and critically, their own digital wallet and potentially microfinance services. They want to create a kind of closed economic loop where money circulates within their ecosystem.
That is a huge amount of technical development, building all those different verticals basically at the same time. How do they plan to get users hooked and keep them loyal beyond just the services themselves? Does that lead to the next layer?
It does. That's layer 2, the social layer. This is designed to be the sort of ideological glue, turning passive users into active advocates for the movement.
How does it do that?
Well, it includes some standard things you'd expect, like member feeds for updates, maybe forums, and definitely robust referral systems to encourage organic growth. But the key, more unique elements are plans for physical, local chapters, real-world community hubs, and very aggressive, quote, gamified recruitment.
Gamified recruitment. What does that mean?
It likely means users get tangible rewards, maybe in-app credits, priority access to services, higher bonuses specifically for actively recruiting new members, new riders, and new drivers onto the platform. It's designed to turn every single member into a kind of volunteer foot soldier, spreading the Kalkawad economic gospel.
Turning users into recruiters.
Okay.
And layer 3, this must be where the actual welfare promises start to materialize. The knowledge and care layer.
Exactly. This layer is where the digital platform meets the physical services, especially the clinics. It's about operational innovation.
So connecting the app to the doctors.
Yes. It plans to link the physical clinics with telemedicine capabilities for remote consultations. It talks about using sophisticated AI triage tools, algorithms maybe, to help manage patient flow efficiently and direct people to the right level of care. And it would also drive extensive preventive care campaigns through the app, health advice, vaccination reminders, that sort of thing.
Makes sense. What else is in knowledge and care?
This layer also houses all the planned education services. That means online courses, potentially accredited micro-degrees focused on high-demand skills. They mention tech, healthcare support, accounting specifically, and dedicated physical skill training centers, too. The goal is to create the seamless link between getting healthcare and getting opportunities for economic empowerment.
Health and skills intertwined. Okay, that leaves layer 4. You mentioned trust and governance earlier. This must be the governance and transparency layer.
This is arguably the most critical layer for long-term success because it underpins the entire social contract. This layer is the infrastructure of accountability.
What does that look like in practice?
The blueprint lists several non-negotiable features here. First, that mission lock ownership structure we discussed legally ensuring profits must go to the mission. Second, a strict zero dividend policy for any shareholders or initial investors that can't extract profits. Third, major policy decisions are supposed to be guided or even made by elected local councils, giving the community a voice. And fourth, the most technologically ambitious part, a blockchain-based public accounting system.
Blockchain for accounting. Why? Okay, so if this whole 4-layer super app flywheel actually spins up and works as planned, it generates the sustainable funding needed for what the sources call the holistic trifecta of services. We've covered health pretty well, the clinics, the preventative stuff. What about the other 2 legs of the stool? Education and justice.
Right, the trifecta. So, education is framed as the ladder of liberation. It's meant to go beyond just basic job training.
How so?
The sources describe plans for robust scholarship programs, possibly covering those free university degrees they promise. They talk about micro-degrees specifically targeted at skills needed for, say, the global tech economy coding, data analysis, things that could create exportable talent, and also unique learn and earn programs.
Learn and earn.
Yeah. Imagine, for example, getting trained as an accountant or a software developer through the Kalki Sena education platform, and then the Kalki Sena ecosystem itself, maybe the app company or one of the related services, immediately offers you paid work using those new skills. It creates this kind of self-sustaining talent pipeline funded by the app profits.
Interesting synergy. Okay, and the third part of the trifecta, justice. They call it the shield of rights. Legal help is often really expensive and complex, especially for ordinary people. How does a tech app plan to make justice more accessible?
The vision here is quite ambitious. Make basic legal support accessible like medicine. Make it a utility almost.
How would that work?
It involves several components. Establishing legal helplines, probably staffed initially by volunteer lawyers or maybe KRTC-funded paralegals, running community legal clinics out of those local chapter hubs we mentioned, and importantly, developing digital legal forms and templates accessible through the app.
So simplifying common legal tasks.
Exactly. Trying to simplify things like basic property disputes, maybe employment contract issues, family law forms, using the app as an interface to guide people through common processes, providing basic advice, and significantly lowering the barrier, both cost and complexity, for ordinary citizens who need to understand or defend their rights. It's about turning a typically high-cost, intimidating service into something subsidized and user-friendly. #TAGTAG33. The novelty, governance, and risk profile.
Okay, this whole model, it's clearly trying to weave together a lot of different threads we've seen elsewhere. Crowdfunding, social enterprise models like B or A, mission-driven companies like Patagonia. But putting it all together in this specific way, how truly novel is this Kalki Sena approach when you look globally? Is this combination genuinely unique?
That's a great question. The novelty, I think, really lies in the specific pairing of the revenue engine with the services being delivered. You're right, the individual elements exist. We know cross-subsidy models can work. Aravind Eye Care in India is a classic example, using profits from paid surgeries to fund free ones to the poor.
Right, we know that model.
And BRACE in Bangladesh, it's a behemoth NGO, but it funds something like 80% of its massive social programs from its own profitable businesses, dairy, poultry, handicrafts, etc.
So social enterprises funding nonprofits, that's established.
Exactly. And companies like Patagonia or Newman's Own even, they pioneered that mission lock idea, legally dedicating profits to specific causes, environmental or charitable.
But those examples, Aravind has hospitals, BRA has physical businesses, Patagonia makes clothes. Kalki Sena is pinning its entire funding stream on the digital ride-hailing market. That feels different.
That is the genuine distinction, and it's also the source of the highest risk, frankly. The true novelty here is the specific formula, high-frequency, relatively low-margin digital mobility profits being used to perpetually fund a universal network of healthcare, education, and legal aid. That direct link at that scale from that specific type of digital business, that seems genuinely distinctive.
And the execution challenge shifts significantly then, doesn't it? It's less about managing a clinic efficiently and more about winning a brutal tech war against global giants while perfectly upholding this incredibly demanding social promise.
Precisely. Which brings us straight back to governance. If the whole thing lives or dies on that promise, 100% of profits fund the mission, how do they possibly guarantee that? How do they legally, ethically ensure that 5, 10 years down the line, the money doesn't somehow start leaking out to private investors or shareholders? This mission lock isn't just a feature, it's the absolute make-or-break foundation.
So what do the sources say about structuring that? How do they plan to make it truly bulletproof?
The documents are very clear that this structure has to be legally impenetrable. It requires kind of fiduciary architecture, maybe similar to the quite radical legal redesign that Patagonia undertook a couple of years ago. Ownership has to be irrevocably tied to the social mission itself, not to individuals seeking return.
Like putting the ownership in a trust or something.
Potentially something like that, yes. The structure must legally enforce that zero dividend policy we mentioned. No matter how profitable the ride-hailing app becomes, the equity holders, whoever they might be initially, cannot extract cash flow as dividends. 100% of net profit must be channeled into the KRTC non-profit functions. That has to be baked into the legal DNA of the company.
Okay, that's the legal lock. Yeah. But what about earning and maintaining the trust of those 2 million initial members and everyone who joins after, especially if the core philosophy promises, a 95% reduction in corruption? They need radical transparency, particularly around the money.
Absolutely essential. This is where that governance layers technology, specifically the blockchain ledger, becomes so critical. It's presented as the mechanism for delivering immutable proof.
Immutable proof of the money flow.
Yes. The vision is that public-facing dashboard we talked about. Every member can supposedly log in and track in near real time. Here's the money coming in from rides today, here's the documented calculation of net profit, and here's the verified transaction record showing those funds moving directly into the budget lines for clinic operations, medicine procurement, scholarship funds. It uses technology to try and enforce the moral architecture of the system.
That level of transparency would be, well, revolutionary if they can pull it off. It's the key to maintaining what the sources call the currency of trust, which is absolutely vital for any large-scale crowdfunding or digital service platform like this.
It is. But even with perfect governance and transparency, the financial risks involved in executing this are still incredibly high. The blueprint itself identifies 4 key risks. We should probably dissect their proposed mitigation strategies.
Definitely. Let's start with risk number 1. Low member uptake. What if they don't hit that initial target of 2 million members paying Rs, 1,251? The whole Rs, 2.5 billion seed fund, might not materialize, or at least not quickly.
Right. That's a major risk up front. The mitigation strategy described relies on disciplined, phased, or staggered rollout. They can't just open 200 clinics on day 1 based on hope.
Start smaller.
Exactly. Maybe begin by opening, say, 50 clinics in carefully chosen, high-impact locations. Prove the model works. Demonstrate the value and the unit economics to that crucial initial base of early adopters. Then, expand the clinic network in phases, directly tied to the actual number of members joining and the capital actually accumulated. They simply cannot afford to overextend based purely on projections.
Okay, prudent rollout. Makes sense. Risk number 2, app competition. You mentioned the big foreign players, Pathio, InDrive, Yango. That's a brutal, cutthroat market. How can a brand new Nepali app realistically lure away drivers and riders who are already using platforms they know and are comfortable with?
This is a huge challenge. The mitigation strategy has to involve creating a really unique, sustainable, competitive moat that directly leverages the social mission. It can't just be about price.
Why not just offer drivers a bigger cut of the fare?
Because the global competitors, with their deep pockets, can always temporarily match or beat that if they feel threatened. It becomes a race to the bottom on margins. Kalki Sena's advantage has to be structural.
So what kind of structural advantage?
For drivers, the incentive needs to be more than just cash per ride. The sources suggest integrating the social benefits directly into the driver proposition. For example, maybe guarantee Kalki Sena drivers and their immediate families priority access to the free clinics. Offer subsidized education or skills training for their children through the knowledge layer.
So the app becomes almost like an employer providing a social safety net, but funded by the mission's profits, not by direct employment taxes.
Something like that, yes. It creates stickiness beyond just the fair percentage. And for riders, the hook isn't just price either. It's that powerful combination of ethical consumption, knowing your ride fund's healthcare, may be combined with some tangible benefit, like integrated basic health coverage or priority clinic access linked to your app usage. The strength of that social contract has to be compelling enough to overcome the sheer convenience or existing network effects of the foreign apps.
Building a moat based on values and integrated benefits. Okay. Risk number 3, profit volatility. The ride-hailing business itself is notoriously fickle, right? It's vulnerable to economic downturns, sudden fuel price hikes, new regulations. If that primary cash flow engine sputters, the funding for the clinics immediately suffers.
Absolutely. Relying on a single volatile income stream is dangerous. The mitigation strategy here goes back to that super app vision and diversification.
Spreading the risk.
Exactly. That single source of income from rides absolutely must evolve into multiple, hopefully more stable revenue streams over time. They need to generate income from fees on their digital wallet transactions. They need the cloud kitchens and food delivery to become profitable. They might generate revenue from advertising within the app ecosystem, maybe even ethical, low-interest microlending to small businesses that are part of their e-commerce platform.
So build multiple pillars under the financial roof.
Yes, and use the profits from those diverse streams to build up significant reserve funds. They need a cushion to smooth out the inevitable bumps and fluctuations in the core ride-hailing business profit.
Makes sense. Okay, final one. Risk number 4, regulatory barriers. Trying to launch a massive new transportation service and a national healthcare network almost simultaneously sounds like an administrative and regulatory nightmare waiting to happen.
It definitely carries huge regulatory risk. The proposed solution in the documents emphasizes organizational clarity and meticulous compliance, meaning they have to be absolutely rigorous about maintaining legally distinct registrations for the nonprofit entity, the KRTC, handling the clinics and social programs, and the for-profit private limited company, running the Kalki Sena Drive app and other commercial services. Each entity has to strictly adhere to all the specific health regulations, transport licenses, data privacy laws, financial regulations relevant to its operations in Nepal.
So keeping the church and state separate, legally speaking.
Precisely. Any slip-up in compliance, any failure to get the right licenses or meet standards could give regulators a perfect excuse to shut down part or even all of the operation, regardless of how popular or beneficial it might seem socially. Compliance has to be watertight.
Okay, so acknowledging all those risks and the strategies to manage them, let's step back and look at the long view. The sources provide a kind of 10-year financial projection, a base case scenario. If this thing actually works, what does success look like by, say, 2035?
The projections are obviously speculative, but they're built around hitting certain key milestones linked to member growth and operational sustainability. By year 2, maybe around 2027, the main focus is internal validation. They aim to achieve capital break-even, meaning the app profits are starting to cover the ongoing costs. This probably requires hitting somewhere between 600,000 and 800,000 active members. They need to operate maybe around 300 clinics successfully by then. Year 2 is really the proof of concept phase, proving the flywheel actually spins.
Okay, prove it works first. Then, assuming it does, they accelerate towards national scale by year 5, around 2030.
That's the projection. By year 5, they're aiming for national expansion. They project growing to around 2 million active members across the country, operating maybe over 650 clinics, and achieving a healthy EBITDA margin earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization somewhere in the range of 8 to 15%.
So significant profitability by then.
Yes. This is the point where the whole ecosystem is projected to be generating perhaps Rs 20 to 30 billion in annual revenue, which would be enough not just to sustain the clinics, but to seriously start funding and expanding the other parts of the trifecta, the free education and legal aid services nationwide.
And the ultimate horizon they paint. Year 10, out to 2035, what's the end state vision?
The end state vision is essentially establishing this forever institution. By year 10, they project scaling up significantly, maybe reaching 4 to 5 million active members and operating more than 1,200 clinics across Nepal. But critically, the underlying investment thesis presented is that the Kalki Sena super app is not designed as a typical tech startup looking for a quick, profitable exit or acquisition.
No IPO dreams.
Apparently not. It's structured more like a permanent endowment fund. The continuous substantial cash flow generated by all those high-frequency digital transactions, rides, food orders, wallet fees is meant to be perpetually locked in, forever funding the social welfare needs of millions of Nepalis. It's designed to function almost like a parallel non-state, self-funded tax system powered by voluntary commercial activity. Hashtag PopOAV. Conclusion and provocative thought.
Wow. When you lay it all out like that, this blueprint really is, well, it's a spectacular display of joined-up thinking, isn't it? Integrating finance, complex technology, social ideology, public health. It feels like an attempt to, I don't know, take the ancient logic of communal welfare, things like old monasteries providing care, or Islamic Waqf foundations, or even European cooperative movements, and completely modernize it, rebuild it, using a very 21st century tech stack. Super apps, AI, blockchain.
That's a great way to put it. It's like an attempt to digitize communal responsibility. It leverages the almost frictionless nature of digital transaction profits money that's already flowing through the economy for rides and deliveries, and tries to systematically channel that flow towards building a comprehensive, maybe even state-of-the-art social safety net. It's incredibly integrated and relies entirely on the internal economic activity generated by the movement itself.
Okay, so if we try to synthesize our whole deep dive here, looking at the financial blueprint, the tech, the risks, the governance, where do we ultimately land on the overall feasibility of this Kalki Sena model? Is it credible?
Well, based purely on the numbers presented in the sources, the foundational logic seems surprisingly strong, actually. The startup capital model that R's $2.5 billion they aim to raise through the initial R's, 1,251 memberships, we'd have to rate that as strong in terms of potential feasibility. And the recurring revenue engine, the potential for the Drive app, especially if it becomes a super app, to generate R's $1 billion or more in annual net profit that also looks strong, provided, and it's a big provided, they can actually achieve that critical 15 to 20% market share tipping point against entrenched competition.
So the core financial engine looks plausible on paper. What about the execution side?
Yeah.
The areas where the plan seems maybe weaker or carries more risk?
That's where the assessment shifts. We'd have to rate the operational cost management, actually running hundreds of clinics efficiently nationwide, and especially the transparency and governance aspects as potentially moderate to weak in terms of guaranteed success.
Why weak? Because the plan isn't detailed enough.
Not necessarily because the plan lacks detail or intention, but because these areas demand near flawless, highly disciplined execution within what would be a rapidly scaling, incredibly complex organization. Specifically, that mission lock ownership structure must be legally airtight and rigorously defended against any future challenges. And that promise of radical transparency through the blockchain ledger. It can't just be talk. The public must have real, easy, verifiable access to that data. If they fail on maintaining that absolute transparency, the entire social contract underpinning the whole movement could instantly collapse. Trust is everything here.
Absolutely. But the sheer scale of the ambition remains fascinating, almost a kind of global case study in the making. If this were to succeed, even partially, that single payment of Rs 1,251 doesn't just buy you a book and make a donation. It potentially bootstraps Nepal's first truly mass-scale, self-funded, maybe even universal welfare system, all generated internally, circumventing traditional reliance on foreign aid or needing massive hikes in the national tax base.
It reframes citizen participation, doesn't it? It tries to create a system where your everyday commercial transaction, hailing a ride, ordering food, becomes in itself a direct mechanism for funding national development and social well-being.
Every transaction's a transformation, as the source material puts it.
Exactly.
And that, I think, leads us directly to our final provocative thought for you, our listeners, to maybe mull over.
Yeah.
This Kalki Sena model makes that bold claim every transaction is a transformation. If it's even remotely possible that the operational profit derived from something as mundane as ride-hailing within just a single city like Kathmandu could be successfully engineered to fully and perpetually subsidize comprehensive healthcare, education, and legal aid for millions of citizens, does this Kalkiwad economics, this specific blueprint, offer a potentially viable non-state alternative template for providing universal basic services that could perhaps be adapted, replicated, and scaled in other developing nations around the world?